Welcome to Faith Meets Fate, where we explore connection and meaning through the stars.
Hi, and welcome to Faith Meets Fate. I am here with Ryan Hunt and Mindy DeGraffenreid, and today we are discussing a horary question: was Joseph Smith a fraud? Mindy, did you want to share with us a little bit about what horary is?
Sure. So Horary is an ancient branch of astrology. William Lilly, the father of Horary, wrote the book Christian Astrology. Is that right? Am I getting the title right, Ryan?
Yep.
Christian Astrology. Yeah. So it is, it's a branch where you pose a very specific question. You create a chart at the moment that you understand the question. So it's essentially the birth of that question. And so the chart is set for the moment that the astrologer understands what is being asked. And then by using the symbols on the chart, we study those, what the symbolism means, what the aspects mean, a answer is found. There's hopefully a conclusion that can be given to that question. So it is a predictive form of astrology. It is something that is fascinating and nuanced, and I think it's going to be exciting to dig into this today.
Yeah, I think for me, studying horary has been probably quite hard to get my head around it but I feel like it really does help deepen like my understanding of the symbols, and to understand what I'm looking out for when I'm reading a birth chart. Ryan, I think you have a little bit more insight as to who John Dehlin is in Mormon Stories. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the way that we came about with taking up this question is that John Dehlin, who is the host of the podcast Mormon Stories, has a Substack and published a post on Substack where he asks this question. And then he walks through 5 ways of which he thinks Joseph Smith is a fraud, or not necessarily where he's drawing a conclusion, but where these are points that could be considered fraudulent, and then asks his readers to respond and say, do they think Joseph Smith is a fraud? Blah, blah, blah. So, and the background on Mormon Stories is John Dehlin, back in the early 2000s, started this podcast, Mormon Stories, where he was exploring his own faith crisis and his, what was going on for him as he was coming to understand what was for him fairly shocking kinds of pieces of information about the Mormon church. And so he started this podcast as a way to kind of like, I kind of didn't see it as therapy at the time, but I could see it as kind of like a therapeutic process to like share with the world what's going on for you. Kind of like there's people that do podcasts like that. So anyways, he did this podcast to kind of like connect with people and to say, hey, is there other people out there having this experience? And lo and behold, there were a lot of people that were like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So over the years, and I think it's been running for at least 15 years or longer.
I wonder how many there are. Do you know how many? I mean, it is so long running.
How many episodes?
How many episodes? How many people he's interviewed? There
were hundreds by the early 2010s,
Yeah.
Early teens. Yeah. He's interviewed a lot of people, on both sides. He's been very careful to be, respectful of both sides of the faith position and where people are at in their journey, accepting people that are totally exited and removed their membership, as well as people that are totally still in it and just trying to struggle with how to reconcile these kinds of things. And then later he had more run-ins with the church. They ended up excommunicating him. He's continued on with Mormon Stories, and I think he's got his I think he's a licensed counselor now.
Therapist, yeah.
Therapist. So, he's continued on that journey and is really doing a lot of work for this community. So that's kind of the background on John, Mormon Stories. And
Ryan, can I interject?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, coming from a place of being deep in the church and being, a true believer for so long, John Dehlin was the epitome of evil. I mean, that was my understanding within the church was
Wow.
this was the carrier of apostasy.
Are
So-
you serious? Wow.
Oh yeah. Like if you were to go and listen to Mormon Stories, like that specifically, it was like
Yeah.
Mormon Stories, CES letter. Those were the
Yeah.
two. That was
Yeah.
like if you ventured into those, you were going to get apostate leprosy, right? Like it was going to get all over you. And that was
Wow.
so for me to have come out and then have listened to some of the stories and to recognize how much he has honored all
Yeah.
the sides,
Right.
I realize how there was some brainwashing there of like, this was all bad, or this is all trying to get people out of the church. Like that
Right.
was the big goal.
Right.
And now to understand that he was studying history, he was studying people's stories, their experiences, and it is far more vast than that. So I just thought that was an interesting experience to then step out of and actually engage in something. And it reminds me a little bit of like good old fashioned book burning, like don't read outside of the list of books we give you. Don't talk to people out of the list of people we allow you to talk to,
Right.
And so
it's so wild. It's so wild because all the topics that he talks about on his podcast, or at least in the very early days, all these kinds of things that have been shocking to people. Like I remember being at BYU Hawaii in my church history class, and we learned about all of those things. Like my professor taught those things, but he did it in a way that was reflective and very similar to John Dehlin of like, these things are out there and I'm not going to try to whitewash them for you. And you need to wrestle with them as a part of your faith. They're not part of history. History are these things, but I'm not going to try to like deny history. You need to like figure that. So it was like, I was at BYU Hawaii and he was teaching like this. He was a very controversial teacher. He would do things like go running on Sunday and get tickets from the campus police.
Oh my God. Oh wow.
And he died unfortunately of cancer not too long after I left the school, but he was a really incredible teacher.
That's a gift to be exposed like that to a way of thinking, to help you have critical thinking rather than think this way.
Right. And so as a consequence, none of those things bothered me.
Wow.
The thing that bothered me and that I ended up leaving BYU Hawaii over was the absolute hypocrisy and bigotry and complete disregard for human like decency that so many of the leadership in the university had towards the students and the other faculty. Like I just the sheer like machinery that was just like shocking to me is what ended up propelling me out and said, I cannot go to this school anymore. It's not working for me. But it wasn't any of the historical stuff. Not all that was just like, oh yeah, that's history. Yeah. And it kind of lined up with my own family history too, because we tell family history stories about stuff. So anyways,
Yeah. So anyways, back to because John Dehlin is the one who posed the question that we're going to be addressing with the Horary today. It's just interesting to consider where it comes from and now recognizing that he is really such a kind person who was helping people to express their questions, their concerns, their stories, and to not feel alone in that journey.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're kind of actually a little bit in his footsteps.
Yeah.
Us three right here,
Yeah. I've only met him once in person. He came to Boise when I was still living in, I think I was living in Garden City or anyways, I'm living in that Boise area. And he came to Boise and I remember meeting him there. He was super nice, super kind. We hung out for a good period of time and it was a very small community still at that time. Mormon Stories was like, there were a few hundred of us around, the country, or maybe there was a couple thousand by then. I can't remember, but this was like country or worldwide. It was pretty small then. And so, he came and we had a whole like workshop. We all got together and, people will get up and talk. And we had, anyways, so, and I stayed in touch with him a little bit. Every once in a while, I'll reach out to him and just say hi and stuff like that. But he's a very kind person, so it's unfortunate he's been vilified to the depth that he has. Yeah, I mean, just that, totally.
Well, and the continuation of that vilification is part of where this question comes from, right? Is there's
Right.
been just such an upheaval with the lawsuit against him.
With the lawsuit, so that's also part of the background. So yeah, so not just being excommunicated years ago, but now he's being sued by the Mormon Church over copyright, trademark. I mean, I don't know the full background of the lawsuit. I did download the lawsuit, the filing from the Utah court, and I kind of looked through it, but it was tedious, legal and tedious, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really. They're doing something. It's like, okay, but anyways, yeah, it continues on, and the Mormon Church has continued to pursue him, and like for a church whose actual official like corporate structure is called intellectual reserves. Like that's like the official name of the legal name of their church, right? Like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is what I remember is like a trademark of intellectual reserves.
Yeah.
It's not actually like the corporate name.
Where all the money runs through.
Right. Oh no, they do have intellectual reserves is where they own everything, and then the corporation, the president is
there.
That's the actual real name of the church, is the corporation, the president,
which means all of it belongs to the president, right? Like, isn't that one of the
corporate? So it's the Mormon Church is a corporation sole, which so the president, the prophet, is the entire shareholder, owner of the thing. There are no really, like from a traditional standpoint, there's no members of the church because the prophet is the only member,
the sole holder of
it's the only member. Nobody gets to, like, we go in and we raise our hands and vote and stuff like that. None of that actually matters. The president can just like say what he wants and just dictate that, and that's the end of the story. Everything else is more like debate and dialogue amongst their customers. I mean, members of the church are actually customers of the corporation. It's not really members per se. I'm not like I'm not like trying to be negative about it. I'm just like saying that there's like, you could never, like, there's no way for the members to rise up and vote for something in opposition to the prophet. He's like the sole owner of things, right, by design. Yeah. Right. So whereas like other kind of 501c3s or other kind of community oriented churches, the membership do elect their board of directors, and the board of directors hires the priest, or the minister, the priestess, or whoever, right? So it's a very different kind of model. Yeah, is all I'm saying. Yeah.
And right now, the president of the church is an attorney.
Oh, who is it now?
Has been, right? President Oaks has been an attorney and is the one that's
an attorney, right? Yeah,
is now filing the lawsuit against Dehlin. Mormon Stories. I don't know. The whole dilemma. Yeah,
so that's kind of the background of the question. And so, and then to help you understand why it's valid, right? Yeah. So in a horary, when you're doing horary, the horary is cast, right, for the time that the question is asked and taken up by the astrologer. So John asked the question, published it, and then we were all like this talking together on one of our chat sessions, and we decided, oh yeah, let's take up the question. And so at that moment, I screenshot the clock on my screen so that we had the timestamp for when we had decided to take the question. So that was how we came about the time for the question. It's not the time that John asked the question on Mormon Stories. It's the time that we collectively said, oh yeah, we're going to do this as a question. I snapshotted the time, and that set the time and location for the chart.
Right.
Which, we're going to get into in a second. Yes. Anyways, that was kind of the background. Is that enough background about all the things? Can we get into the chart or anything else
I think we've gone very much into the details with that one.
Okay. We had a few tangents there, but we'll get through it.
You can share it.
Let's do it. Let's pull the chart up. All right. So here is, and now come back to reading glasses. Yeah, so to orient people in the chart, so Bianca, Mindy, and I are all met in the Nightlight School of Astrology, which is a Hellenistic traditional astrological school that utilizes whole sign houses, except for in Horary. And Adam is the teacher at Nightlight Astrology. Adam Elenbaas. So you can also check out his channel. But he teaches in the tradition of John Frawley, using Regiomontanus as a house system for non-astrological people. Don't worry about this. For the astrologers, I'm just like laying it out there which house system we're using and why. So I also have studied with Anne Ortelee and Wade Caves. So I have a little bit more background in astrology. I mean, in Horary beyond what Adam teaches. But I do tend to stay with the Frawley work, and I do use the Regiomontanus. So this chart is cast in Regiomontanus houses. And yeah, that's kind of like the basics of the chart that we already said, the time and location. Location, I'm in Berkeley, California. And since I cast the chart, I use my location. The house structuring would be different if Bianca or Mindy use their location, but I cast the chart, and so that's it. The chart is now cast. So there we are.
Yep. Since it's based on the astrologer who made the decision, that's how it works.
Yeah. So,
so the question again.
Yeah. So do you want to? So the question that John posed was Joseph Smith a fraud? And there were 5 points that he talked about in his article. Later we can pull those up, but before we do that, do either of you feel like you want to orient a little bit to the chart and like around the querent and quested, or do you want me to talk about that a little bit? Do you know enough about the querent and the quested, layouts to say a few things? Or
yeah, I mean, I understand the querent is usually the L1, Lord of ruler of the first house, or the moon.
So this is the, whoops, yep, let me get my circle. So this is what we're talking about right here, right? Can you see that? Is that drawing?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very good. Although it is so tiny on my screen. Leo? I think it's Leo.
Yeah. Well, here's Leo. Yeah, it looks kind of like it's Leo this is the 12th house, but the cusp of the first house here is in Leo. Exactly.
Right. And so the ruler of Leo would be the sun. So we'd be looking at the sun, which is exalted in Aries in the 9th house of dogma and religion and such things. So that's interesting right out the gate.
Right.
Beyond that, I have ideas for what it is that we're looking for. So if we're trying to discover,
we also the querent. So in this case, we'll talk about some of these words as they come along for people. So querent is the person who is asking the question. And
so actually, that would be us.
Well,
right?
Originally it's John, right? So John asked the question. We're the astrologers, but I think that in this case, there's actually an interesting coincidence because the question is also relevant to us as astrologers, that it's a question that we can also be asking. So I think that in addition to us being the astrologers, we can also be co-querents in a way with John,
Yeah.
So querent is the name of the person that is asking the question. And they, as Mindy said, they do get the signifier of the ascendant, the Lord of the ascendant, or the ruler of the ascendant, which is the sun. And they also get a second signifier, which is always the moon, if the moon is available. As long as the moon's not taken by some other purpose, then the moon also signifies the querent. There's 2 signifiers for the querent.
Ryan, your sound is going in and out a little bit.
Oh, let me try to readjust. How's this? Is this any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. I just jiggled the plug. Let me know if that happens again.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So we have both of these signifiers for the querent, and then there's another funny word, the quesited.
And that is who or what we're asking about.
That's the object. That's the object of the
Joseph
question,
Smith.
right?
Right.
So there's
Right.
the querent who asks the question, and the question is about the quesited. So it's like, and it's a kind of a funny word, but it like the way that I kind of remember the word is it kind of sounds like quest.
Yeah.
So it's like you're on a quest to find something. So it's not the questited, it's the quesited, but it's like that. It's like the quest.
It sounds the same.
Kind of sounds like, that's how I remember it. Like there's whatever is being sought after is the quesited. Right?
And this is where it gets trickier, right? Like the querent, we always know, go to that ascendant ruler, the moon. But when you're looking at the quesited, you have to understand significations. You've got
You
to
have to understand
houses.
significations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have identified the signifier for Joseph Smith that I think is valid. But before I say mine, I'm curious to see, if either of you have an idea of what you would use as the signifier for Joseph Smith.
Well, if I'm thinking of me as the querent being the first house,
Yeah.
and I'm inquiring about someone else like Joseph Smith, I would tend to think that it'd be the seventh house, the ruler of the seventh house, which in this case is Saturn, right? But I mean, yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts, Mindy?
I played with a couple of thoughts. If I was just going with kind of a universal feeling, the first thing that came up for me for Joseph Smith, the person, just because of the things we know about him, was Jupiter. It was just like, just as a planet rather than a lord of, right? I was just like, ooh, what does he feel like? But then as the mind gets going, I think, okay, well, if we're playing with planets, Mercury as the trickster, conjunct Neptune, kind of a religious, I mean, there's a bunch that could be played with right there, When I was looking at houses and considering, I had a couple of thoughts there as well. Like if we're looking at a religious philosophy, I think of the ninth house. When I think of a cult, then I think of maybe more like the 11th house. So there were a lot of things. This is where I always get stuck.
Yeah.
So, just being honest, this is where I get stuck is I don't know which one to lean into. And as I played with them, a lot of them worked together almost to add double testimony.
Yeah.
So those are just like spaghetti on the wall. You take it, right?
So when I studied with Anne Ortelee, she said whenever you have a named individual, that individual is going to be signified by Lord of the Seventh, L7.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was Anne. I don't think that Adam doesn't necessarily have such a tight distinction. Adam often will search for the signifier based on meaning. And I kind of think that has been a better approach for me. So I will try to find the signifier from the appropriate house, unless I can't, and then I will lean back on the seventh house if they're a named person, as in the self other, the ascendant, self, descendant, other.
Yeah.
In Joseph Smith's case, because we're asking about a deceased person, and we're asking about a deceased person, the kind of role that they had, I thought that Joseph Smith could either be L9 or L10, because L10 because of the authoritarian nature of the church itself.
Sure.
And eventually I leaned on L9. And the reason why I leaned on L9 is because, and I want you to push back on me and tell me if you think this is crazy, then we can go to L7. But the reason why I think L9 is because, and for those of you who are not familiar with the way that we talk in Horary, L9 means Lord of the Ninth. So, and we say Lord of the Ninth because Lord doesn't mean like Lord as in Lord God. This is like Lord as in like duke or duchess, of a realm, right? And that's just like the planet that is responsible for that house. So I say L9 because L9 is the joy of the sun, the house of God, and Joseph Smith within the mythos of the Mormon religion is somewhat deified.
Mm-hmm.
Not fully. People don't necessarily like go out and like say that clearly, but obviously the theology of Mormonism is that we all are gods, and that it was clear that Joseph Smith believed that after he died, he would be a god as well as everybody else. And so we would like, I kind of like put him. And so like when people go up in church to bear their testimony, what is one of the things they say?
I know Joseph Smith was a true prophet of God.
Like, I know Joseph Smith was a true prophet. It's like that sentence is like drilled into kids from the time they're about 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of put Joseph Smith as L9. But I could, if you guys want to push back on that, I could go for L7.
I like that.
No, I would totally lean there.
I like that. I like that. And I was thinking, with my very limited horary knowledge, I was thinking of this when I'm thinking of the 7th house as being just a basic, like, here's the other person. Joseph Smith is the other person that I'm asking about. Mm-hmm. And just some of the significations of the if we were to turn the chart, if the 7th house was Joseph Smith's first house, and I'm like, you've got the North Node there, and then all of like the 8th house would be his second house, got all that activity going on there, and then we've got the lights, the luminaries in his 3rd house, the 9th, our radix 9th house. So there's that, the 3rd house of like ritual and like community and like the congregation, and and then got that exalted Jupiter in his 5th house, this chart's 11th house exalted, and he had many wives. What do you do with many wives? I don't know. So yeah, just like on a real, I'm neither here nor there, I don't care, but I'm just like, well, here's another idea, here's another perspective, but totally going with your 9th house thing. But I'm just like, hey.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're valid. Like I said, Anne was pretty adamant, like, anytime you had a named individual. But the reason why I didn't immediately go to that is because he's dead, because it's a parasocial relationship we're having with this person, and that it's a collective relationship that we all are having with Joseph Smith, whether positive or negative. And so I was leaning more to, that's why I leaned towards the 9th house. But
also, who is Anne?
Anne Ortelee.
Anne
Ortelee. She's another astrologer. She's well known. She's taught and lectured around, and so yeah, people that are listening might be familiar with her. She's a crack up. I love Anne. She's so fun and funny, and she's always got the wildest stories.
I would lean into the 9th. I love the vibe of the Lord of the 9th. I feel like that, kind of this ruler of the philosophy and religion space, like that's actually what we know of him.
Right.
In the body form, that's the understanding we have. And so, and again, if we're just looking at, similar to what you were saying, Bianca, looking in the 9th house, we have both the luminaries exalted, like there's this sense of lifted up, within that kind of religious leadership, godlike space.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I know Lord of would be Mars, which is also domiciled and sitting right there beautifully with Saturn, the structure, Mercury, the trickster, Neptune, the visionary, religious, maybe illusions. So that would be my leaning, as you're saying, right?
Yeah. So Mindy, you're leaning to 9. I'm leaning to 9. Bianca, you were leaning to 7, but you're accepting of 9.
Just to be different.
Let's go with 9 with You know, like you know how they in like the Enneagram, how you like you're a main type, but then you have like a little subtype.
A wing.
A wing,
Or sometimes, yeah.
We can say that we're going to go for L9 as the primary signifier, and if we get stuck, maybe we'll lean on to L7. But
I haven't thought it entirely through yet, so,
so I have to admit
I want to go a spanner in the works to make this interesting. But
I've spent a lot of time with this chart. I'm super excited about it. So I've done a lot of thinking about it, and all my thinking is around L9, but it could easily be adapted to L7. But
Well, let's see where you've gone.
I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about a few of these things with you. So moving ahead with L9, right?
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you both mentioned the sun and the moon in the 9th house in their respective exaltations. Okay. Now, for our listeners that don't know what an exaltation is one of those words that sounds very Mormon.
I hadn't even thought of that.
I was thinking,
and this does not mean that they're in the celestial kingdom.
No, that's good. But maybe we can twist it, you know.
Right?
If we're trying to be unbiased here,
Right,
you know.
sure. I mean,
maybe he's
okay, so the
exalted.
sun is in the celestial kingdom, and in his celestial kingdom, and the moon is in her celestial kingdom.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, God, I love that.
Yeah, and in the 9th house. Now, so what we would say, right? So so let me just point this out. So the 9th house cusp, and I'm going to draw it, is right here for people that are looking. It's that little line that's hard to see, but it's pointing into Aries, in which the ruler of Aries is Mars, and the Mars is this symbol right here. So with Mars being the ruler of Aries, and Aries being on the cusp of the 9th house, Mars becomes the lord of the 9th house, or L9. And so Mars being that L9, and the sun and the moon representing the querents, that's John and us. The querents, the sun is in a condition when it's in its exaltation. It's exalting itself when it's in its own exaltation. And the moon is exalting herself. So this would be like saying that the querents are exalting themselves, right? Which I think
definitely think we are all that.
I think it's an interesting position. We're self-exalted as the querents. John self-exalted. So it's like in a position of extreme strength relative to the question, I think.
Yes.
As the querent. The querent is strongly, and the 9th house is considered a good house. You know, it's a cadent house, but it's still considered one of the good houses. It is the joy of the sun. So the sun is in its own joy here. It's exalted. It's in its own joy. It's very strong. It's very dignified. The moon is very dignified. And so the querents come to the question with a lot of dignity and a lot of, you know, maybe not self-realization, but orientation, right?
And would you say as well that having them both be in the 9th is just another testimony of, yeah, we're asking a question
about the 9th? Yeah. So exactly. So our signifiers, John's signifier is in the 9th house. So it's a sign that's saying, yes, the querent has a strongly vested interest in the topics of the 9th house,
right?
Both in terms of religion, philosophy, higher learning and education, as well as the quested Joseph Smith. So we have interest in this question, in the person, in the object of this question, and we all do. We all kind of like grew up pretty deep into it.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that's an important thing. Also, the fact that the sun, it's in its exaltation, but it is in the sign of Aries, which means that it is also having there's mixed regard. Like one of the signifiers, the sun, has high regard for Mars, right? It's regarding Mars favorably. The moon has no regard. Doesn't sound like it's a bad regard, but Actually, it is. It is.
Yeah,
a
it is.
detriment.
Yeah,
Because
an
it's the
exile
fall
there.
of Mars. So Taurus is the fall of Mars. The opposite of exaltation is the fall. And that's the opposite sign. So the moon.
No, it's in exile in Taurus. So
Exile. Yeah.
right. So it's not in fall. It's not quite as extreme as the fall. Because it's fall in Cancer.
Fall is in Cancer. You're right. Yeah, it's in its detriment. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Yeah, because I was thinking of the moon's exaltation, but you're right. No, Scorpio is Mars's domicile, and so it's in detriment in Taurus. So the moon has a sort of a detrimental. We would say that as the moon sort of has an unfavorable outlook towards the condition of Mars in this chart. So we have this mixed testimony between the luminaries, the sun and the moon, are the luminaries of the chart. So we have this mixed kind of reception or view of Mars, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I actually appreciate that mixed view.
Yeah.
I think it helps add to us not just coming here saying, well, we know he is a fraud. And so,
Right.
like this is allowing us to actually look from both angles.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Let's see, what was I going to say next? So that's the querent. The signifiers for the querent, the quested is Mars. So we need to kind of like start looking at the different. We've already looked at kind of like the condition of the sun and the moon. They're in exaltation. They're very powerful positions. Mars, on the other hand, if we look at Mars, so Mars is right here again. Mars is dignified in the sense that it has essential dignity. And for those that are might be new to astrology or not familiar with it, essential dignity is the dignity of the planet based upon its fundamental qualities of positioning relative to its signs and its own internal conditions as a planet. And that's different from its accidental dignity, which is where it lands at that moment on the chart. So Mars's essential dignity is it's in Aries, which is the ruler of Aries, which makes it having a positive impact. So Mars is strong there, but it's in the 8th house, which is by traditional standards, is the house is in a configuration called aversion with the ascendant, meaning that it can't see the ascendant well. And so Mars, that 8th house, is considered a dark house. It's not filled with light. So it being a dark house, it tends to be less favorable. So Mars is in kind of an unfavorable accidental dignity. And often in horary, accidental dignity is this stronger signifier, the stronger condition on which to look for. So that's something to pay attention to there. Do either of you want to have anything else to say about the dignity of Mars?
I'm wondering if this applies, and this is a sincere question because I don't know, I haven't made it through with Adam if he uses a lot of the Vedic with that, just looking at the 8th house as a moksha, as a place of release of, I mean, we've got modern interpretation where we would be looking at death, fear, even the occult. That was something I thought, right, in modern was occult, and I would even put like politics and religion there. That doesn't seem like it's as much in the Hellenistic view, but it is still a place of, in my mind, with moksha, that release, which at least religiously, I would think the church, one of the biggest things that the development of the church was, can we answer the questions of, where were we before we came? Why are we here? And where are we going? Like we figure out what is the release from this body and what comes next. So that was just a curiosity that I had, if there's would you look to those topics like moksha?
I don't use those in horary, but I think it's interesting to think about them, in the context of the question for sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't, maybe having that feels to me more topical, which I think is relevant for the discussion. It doesn't seem like it changes the dignity of the planet in terms of trying to determine the outcome of the question, right?
Right. No, you're right. Different topic.
But it's total. No, but I think it's valid in terms of the discussion about, yeah, let's look at what's going on for the signifiers. Because, I mean, obviously it's fun to do this because it's more than just yes or no. It's like we're picking apart all this stuff. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to bring up.
Bianca, you were going to say something.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, all I remember is that in Horary, I've assigned the 8th house as the house of death. Like, yeah. So, yeah, the Lord of the 8th as death. But, like, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's true. So just for people looking, that the 8th, or I'm sorry, I still got the arrow on this little point right here is the cusp of the 8th house. It's in Pisces. So Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. So the house that the signifier of our quested Mars is in is the Lord of that house is Jupiter. And we already mentioned how strongly significant Jupiter is to Joseph Smith. Which one of you mentioned that? Do you want to, whoever said it, want to say why that, what's a little bit of the background on Jupiter?
Sure. I mentioned it. He carried, Joseph Smith carried a little amulet, a little coin that had the symbol of Jupiter on it.
Yeah.
And, upon even looking further, I think there was a lot of connection that Joseph Smith had with magic, masonry, all of the symbols, and certainly astrology, right? So I think Jupiter, I'm curious, if one of the reasons that he had that was a connection to God, was the connection to Jupiter as a symbol of Zeus or Jesus or whatever, if there was some relevance within his own thinking that was a protection, that symbol was a protection from him against the evils of dark magic or what have you. So anyway, Jupiter just seemed like it was a big deal to Joseph Smith specifically.
Yes. And the chart that I use for his birth has Jupiter on the ascendant.
Oh, that's right.
All right. That makes sense.
Sag rising Jupiter on the ascendant.
Yeah.
The research I did into his birth time, I pegged him at about 4:30 in the morning on December 23rd, 1805, in Sharon, Vermont.
Right.
For people who want to track that. So that's the birth chart that I use for Joseph Smith, because the reading that I've been able to do, that's the closest. It's definitely, I can tell it's between 4 and 5 in the morning, I think. And I think it's been a while since I looked into it, but I think I picked 4:30 because it seemed relevant. And because Jupiter was so important to him, and Jupiter, like you said, he had the talisman, I figured since Jupiter was important, and that was approximately the time that he was born and having it on the ascendant. So the chart I picked was specific for Jupiter being on the ascendant. But regardless of whether it's exactly on the ascendant or not, Jupiter is in Sagittarius, and the ascendant is definitely in Sagittarius. And so we definitely have a Sagittarius rising chart for Jupiter, for Joseph Smith, which is, I'm sorry, we don't have a Sagittarius rising chart. We have a Scorpio rising chart. Let me just correct that.
Oh,
we have a Scorpio rising chart, but Jupiter is in the first house, I think. Let me see. Let me pull it up. I've got to trying to speak from memory is, just give me a second here.
Either way, it's interesting within this horary chart, if, we're holding to Mars as the representative for Joseph being in the house of Jupiter. That's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah. So here, let me see if I can switch charts really quickly so you can see it, and then I'll switch back. Did it change? No, it didn't, did it?
Yeah. Oh. Yes, it changed.
Okay. Anyway, I can't. Oh, did it?
Yes, it did. Now we're back to the horary. There you go.
Okay, there we are. Joseph Smith. Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's Joseph Smith. So no, yeah, Scorpio rising, Jupiter in the second house.
Neptune on the ascendant and Jupiter in Sag.
Neptune on the ascendant. There we go.
There's nothing wrong with a Neptune on the ascendant.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
It automatically makes you a leader.
I forgot about that. For some reason, I thought he was so Sagittarian. But no, Scorpio makes even more sense for Joseph Smith. Oh, that's
And
funny.
Jupiter and Sag in the second to
Right?
resource
Oh, yeah.
him. Like that was his
Right.
source of caring
Right.
for himself. And yeah, still works.
Okay. Anyways, that's a little fun detour. What else? Anything else about Mars, the dignity or placement of Mars that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's good.
That's good.
Okay. So, so the question is, was Joseph Smith a fraud? So we have to look for trying to understand how would we determine that? How do we answer this question, right? And the fact that it's in the 8th house, a dark house, does lean that direction, right? There's something dark and obscured. Okay. But that's not an indication of fraud per se. It just means that there's something underlying, dark, nebulous, maybe something not quite forthright in its positioning, but it's not like, I wouldn't say the 8th house is exactly a house of deceit. It's just a house that's dark, right?
Right.
So what do we do with, how do we figure it out? So Rex Bills, the rulership book. I couldn't find an exact, let me just double check, because I was about, before I say anything, I was going to say I couldn't find an exact entry for fraud, but let me go back and double check that.
Hey, just while you're looking quickly, I just was noticing that Mars is also the ruler of the 4th house, also a dark house, not a bad one, but connected with esoteric things that are hidden, unseen, so I think that's a curious piece as well.
I did see it. So Rex has Neptune associated with fraud and Pisces, which I don't think is valid. Not that it's an invalid thing for the signifier, but because we don't use Neptune as a signifier, that doesn't really help us. So then I went over to thieves, because Lilly does have quite a bit of information in his book about thievery and fraud, because that was a common question that people brought to Horary. Actually, this is actually a common question for Horary.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I was a little stumped by how do we get there?
Yeah. So let me just. Thieves are typically signified by Mercury, because Mercury is the god of thieves.
Right. Again, the trickster. Yeah.
Right. So Mercury is the god of thieves. We could also think of Mars in thievery, but Mars itself is so typically associated with courage, direct confrontation. Mars is not so thievery orient. You know what I mean? Like,
not so sneaky.
Mars doesn't have the sneaky significations with it, but I know some people might put Mars itself as thievery, but Mercury is very classically the god of thieves.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you both, does that ring with your memories? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we have Mercury. Let me just circle that for people here so they can see that. Let me get my little circler. There's Mercury. And all kind of nestled in there with Mars and Saturn and Neptune, right? Rex thought of Neptune as an indication of fraudulence as well, and Saturn is there. So even what I was saying,
Saturn.
I was just talking about that we have all the players there in that 9th house with everybody.
And not just in the 9th house, but like cuddling up together.
Cuddling up together. So we have to, in order to do a horary, we have to like really think about what's going on here, because it's not just what we see in the chart, but what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at a chart, we're looking at what planet is applying to what other planet, and how, and these kinds of things, what aspects are going on, and what planets. And so before I do want to bring in a second signifier before we go too much further.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's play.
Because I think the second signifier is also important and relevant for the question, in understanding the question and understanding the answer. And that is L10.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm saying L10 because, for two reasons. One, the reason I gave at the beginning of thinking the church as being the authoritarian figure overall. Also in horary, we think of the house that follows after as being the like the successor or whatever's coming next. Like if we think of a business, then the prophet is the house that comes after, because the prophet comes from the business. So the 10th house is what came after Joseph, what came from Joseph, what emitted out of it. We're using the 9th house. And so for me, the 10th house does become the post-Joseph church in general, and becomes Brigham Young as the successor more specifically.
Okay. Would you look at 5th from as this creation?
No, it's very clear. I mean, the horary rules are clear. It's the next house.
Okay.
Like from
I understand like the prophet from,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious about, the idea of
like his legacy.
Yeah.
Yes. Looking at his legacy.
Yeah.
So if we were looking at his legacy, then we have then we would say
that would bring us to the 12th.
9 becomes 1. 9 becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So this is first house cusp,
First house.
second house,
Yeah.
third, fourth, fifth house cusp.
Right.
So then his legacy is the sun.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
kind of is his legacy. his broader legacy is the church itself, the 9th house.
Yeah. So that's an interesting.
That was cool. I didn't see that one.
Yeah. But
Right?
let's go ahead and finish your thought on the 10th.
Yeah. So the 10th would be then the signifier, the L10 is Venus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Happily situated.
Happily situated, somewhat happily situated on the midheaven, right? She's like right after the midheaven. So yeah. So, and I just want to kind of like name that now, and we'll come back to that in a second. But Venus, I think, is the signifier, as L10 is the signifier of Brigham Young and post-Joseph church in general.
Okay.
Is what I'm going to go for. Y'all can say something else if you want.
I already did. Go ahead.
So what we have is the Lord of the Thieves is making an applying aspect to the signifier of Joseph Smith. You see that?
Okay.
Mercury is 5:30.
Yeah.
Joseph is at Mars is at 7:3.
Mm-hmm.
Mercury is moving faster than Mercury. Let me just check the speed of Mercury. Actually, I think Mercury is moving faster.
Oh, it's certainly faster than Mars.
Unless it's I don't think it doesn't look close to stationing. So let's just check.
It's exact the next day. So Mercury runs right into Mars.
Run right into Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why my
And then we think of the Mercury having just passed Neptune and kind of, yeah.
Mercury is as 131 and Mars's speed is 46 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah, you bump it one day and you've got Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. If you're not looking at the minutes, they're all at 7 degrees.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mercury is applying to Mars very clearly. You know what? That switched back to whole sign.
Oh, went back to the natal.
Yeah. Well, it's not the natal, it's whole sign. I gotta change that to back to.
So
oh no, we're on repeat again.
Back to. All right. So we have Mercury making a direct application to Mars. Mars is applying to Saturn. Mercury is applying to Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you look at it, Mercury is, let me pull my pointer up here. Yeah. Mercury, you see, look, I want to pull your attention. Now, normally we don't use the outer planets in Horary. Or
I was going to ask you that. I was like,
some people do, but I don't usually, especially not for a basic reading. But I think we can get to the same reading without these outer planets. But I do think it's important to put them in. You know, why not? But we have
like a good spice. It flavors it up a little bit.
let's zap it up a little bit. So we have Pluto here in Aquarius at 526, Mercury at 530 in in Aries, which means Mercury is just
off of it,
immediately separating from Pluto.
Yeah.
Right. And had recently, fairly quickly, had also been in contact with Neptune. Right.
Yeah.
So Mercury made contact with Neptune, then made contact with Pluto, and is on his way to making contact with Mars. So
if you're going to do that, you could say first it hit Uranus, then Neptune, then Pluto.
Did it?
29 degrees, then 2 degrees, then 5 degrees.
No, it wouldn't because Uranus is in Taurus.
Oh.
Well, if it was at 29 of Pisces before hitting the 2 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, you could, if you wanted to take Mercury into another sign. I was just keeping everything inside Aries. Okay. Yeah. But because Mercury is in aversion to Uranus in Pisces, and I don't want to take it back. I don't want to take it too back beyond the sign boundary. I don't think we need to. But I mean, you're right. We could. I mean, you could say, oh yeah, it recently had the Uranus. But the point is, the point that I was making is that this is a translation of light.
Yeah.
Right.
Mercury is translating the light between Pluto, Neptune, and then onto Mars.
So we talk about Mercury as like the trickster, and then translating the light from Neptune onto Mars and Saturn. But I watched one of Adam's recent videos on Pluto and Mercury, and I think the title is something like "Making a Deal with the Devil." And I'm also, when I'm looking at this chart and I see that at the moment we've got Mercury exactly as the trickster being, or the deceiver or the thief, and it is coming off, separating from a sextile from Pluto. For me, it kind of it's a really weak, like, because sextile's not super strong in aspect theory, but what I'm thinking here is maybe something to do with this mercurial, this message, but this kind of like Plutonian, like Mercury, whatever Mercury has collected from Neptune, the light, or the illusion or disillusion, first vision, things like that, has somehow been obscured through having passed through the sextile with Pluto, and then he's passing that on to Mars and Saturn. So, and Mars being weird L9, and that is Joseph Smith, right? So yeah, I'm just thinking that maybe there are some deals being made with the devil.
Yeah, a little bit of a power trip.
Right. and Pluto also is the Lord of the underworld, right? And to think about how much of the Mormon church has come to be associated with the pre-existence and the afterlife and doing work for the dead and all these kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
That's very
Absolutely.
That's very Pluto centric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
Ryan, does that shake, those little pieces that Bianca just added, does that shake where you were standing? Because I don't know if we caught that in the recording, that you were saying you don't think that it was intentional fraud, but maybe it was like,
because Mercury is applying to Mars, I was saying I don't think it's intentional. It doesn't seem to be like the fraud has happened. It's more like the fraud is about to happen. Right.
Yeah. As you said, I'm not sure if the recording captured this, Ryan, what you mentioned in Horary, when there is an applying aspect, that means something has not yet been done, but is going to be done.
Yeah.
Where something that's separating, or that is separating from the contact is has already happened and is in kind of past tense.
In the past.
So we're talking about futuristic things that kind of are imminent but haven't yet quite happened. Hence why you're saying you don't think it was intentional, that if there was fraudulent behavior, it wasn't intentional. Is that
so the intention in the sense that I'm saying like Mercury translating from light from Neptune to Mars is the sign of Mercury bringing the delusion or the illusion to Mars, meaning that Mars is under illusion. Mars is under the illusion that Neptune is bringing. So Mars is being the object of the fraud. So in this case, so if Joseph is Mars, Mercury is bringing the fraudulence to him,
right,
as opposed to him bringing the fraudulence to the world.
Right. He stands as a solid object, untouched at this point.
Right. So like this is like the sign of a person, and the reason why this is important is because, and this is where some of the work I was doing historically, and I love, this is one of the things I loved about my church history class. We really studied this part of history because we really got into the idea of, what was going on. And the reality is that historically, the Mormon church was not particularly unique.
Right. Oh, no, it was just part of the Great Revival.
Right. The Great Revival. Its uniqueness is that it survived and all the others didn't. But like one of the 5 points is about Joseph's polygamy, but you have to understand that polygamy, polyamory, polyandry, spiritual marriages, all these kinds of things were actually strongly present in the zeitgeist of that time. Well, before he did not make it up. The Cochranites were practicing this for decades before Joseph Smith. And in fact, what we can see is that it was the conversion of a large portion of the Cochranite community. So Cochrane ended up getting sent to prison, and his followers a lot of them came over into the Mormon church. And there was this whole mission into the area of the country where the Cochranites were at. And that was when all the apostles and Joseph got clued into this idea, and that's when they started practicing polygamy, was through the influence. I mean, there's a correlation. We can't necessarily that one caused the other, because history, we don't have the ability to say. Nobody ever said, oh, they did this. It was always, Joseph was always like, oh, God revealed it to me, right? But God revealed a lot of things to Joseph that, like Emma told him to
other
do.
sources.
Right. Absolutely. That's how I was taught as a kid, that's how revelation works. It always comes from the things around you. It's not like something that just pops out of thin air. So yeah, all that stuff was contemporaneous to Joseph. There were a lot of like these upstart religions, a lot of prophets, a lot of things going on. And like another thing that that John brings up in his question was about the bank, right? But there were a lot of banks that were starting up then. Banks at that point in the U.S. history created their own currency. It was very common for banks to create their own currency. Right. And so creating a bank wasn't actually unusual. And most of them collapsed, like within 1 or 2 years after that. So it wasn't like Joseph starting a bank wasn't uncommon, and the collapse of the bank wasn't uncommon. People losing their money wasn't uncommon. It was just that part of history. So it wasn't like, I don't think like even before this Horary question, I never thought of Joseph as like, oh, I'm going to open up a bank to steal all the money from people. Like, I actually think he probably thought, oh, this would be a great addition to the kingdom of God on earth, is we're going to have our own bank, right? And then he just was like a complete and utter failure as a banker.
Well, and I would say, you know, as my experience leaving the church, this was part of the story that we never got into, and I'm not going to right now, but okay. I have engaged with a lot of people on the journey out who have lifted themselves up.
Yeah.
Right. They've come to the table as kind of the new narcissist of like,
right.
I'm the prophet. I have the answers. I have the way. And it's led me and my husband to go, I really wonder if Joseph Smith was just kind of following the herd and doing what he felt was best according to what was going on at the time. And it got ahead of him. It got bigger than him.
He was what, 13 or 14 years old when he had the first vision?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, honestly,
the actual person,
like, honestly, right? This, to me, the story of Joseph Smith in the first vision is, here's a kid who's in the zeitgeist of all this stuff going on, the spiritual revivalism, prophets popping up all over the places, churches popping up, people saying they're talking to God. He goes out into the forest and he picks some mushrooms and eats them, and he has a psychedelic trip in the middle of the grove, and he probably does see God. That's what happens sometimes when you take psychedelic mushrooms. And he, you know, here's a 14-year-old kid, you know, maybe that was his first mushroom trip ever, and like, he didn't know what was going on. And there was no way to, like, you know, like, that was it. He didn't, like, you know, like, and so I'm just like saying he could like really have, and I'm not trying to say that the first vision didn't happen. Like, I really want to be clear here. I don't want to like scare off the true believers, if any true believers are watching our show, which they probably are not. But if they are, well, and I'm not trying to like make a judgment on the reality of stuff like that, because that's the faith part of our channel. Whatever your faith is. But I will say that, you know, like, there are much more plausible explanations for his behavior than simply the fact that he was maliciously trying to defraud the people around him. You know, that's all I think. I mean,
with that Mercury having just passed Pluto in the sextile, I might beg to differ.
Tell me.
That deal with the devil thing, right?
Tell me.
No, I mean, there's nothing more to it. I think that there was some illusions and self-aggrandizing beliefs, and there's intentions behind that. And I don't know. I just think there could be there's room for believing that he hoped to gain something out of it.
Oh, absolutely. But that's different from fraud.
Yeah, I guess.
I think he was selfish. I think he was egotistical. I think he was misogynistic, like all the things. But the question is, was he a fraud? Was he trying to defraud people? Was he trying to and I kind of, based upon what I've studied and what I see in the chart with the Mercury direction and the Saturn, I think of it more like he was himself the object of his own fraud. Like, if he was a fraud, it was to himself first and foremost. And then he believed what he told people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to try to zoom out from this. I mean, obviously the conversation, we've gone all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we were to just look at it as you're saying, Ryan, I think there are a lot of places that we can go with trying to understand his intentions or something. We can look at what he brought into the world over time, whatever that may be. And, as you were saying, the first vision is so Neptunian. Sure. Okay. So that's coming through. He said that it was an angel at first. He didn't say it was God. He didn't say it was two personages. That changed over time.
That changed
So
over
if
time.
we're just looking at the chart as it stands without all of the going into the weeds that I like to do, come back in and say, yeah, there is potential for all that illusory, but also divine, like hope for divine. That story was not yet born. It was there. It was applying. It was close.
Right.
But in Horary, it had not perfected. The end.
Right.
So
and application to a malefic. When we look at the binary of yes or no in Horary, application to a malefic is the answer is no. So even though the question is he a fraud, which is a negative thing, then this would be the double negation, application to a malefic is no, the answer is no. That would be like the clearest, but I think it's more nuanced than that, which I think is what's been fun to pull stuff out. Because I don't think it's as easy as like, no, he wasn't. I think there was a lot of subtlety to his behavior and what was going on and what he believed versus what he didn't believe. And I think you're right. He was very, his, especially as he got older, his behavior did appear to be quite selfish and self-oriented for his own aggrandizement. Like you're saying, like he was running for president of the United States. Right. He was not like he had a lot, he thought very well of himself. You know what I'm talking about?
And why would he not? He had a whole following of people saying, you are the voice of God. You should lead the country. We're going to hell in a handbasket. Go
Which is Neptune,
hell.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it all plays out. But I think when it comes down to this moment, the moment of astrology, the moment of Horary, the question was posed and it had not perfected.
But this is, so then I want to do the last thing. I think we've talked about a lot, but I did want to talk about the last thing because I brought it up, is that 10th house. So this takes us to where I think we can really see some of the more negative and fraudulent stuff in the chart. And that is Venus. Now Venus is in her domicile. Okay. So that seems to be good. Venus is on the midheaven. That seems to be good. So we're, again, just for people that are trying to follow along, Venus is the Lord of the 10th house. The 10th house is the house that follows after the 9th. So the house following after the 9th would be the successor or the next in line to Joseph, which would be Brigham Young and or the rest of the rest of the historical church after that. Now Venus is a benefic, but we don't count so much her benefic quality, in Horary is when we're as the result of the signifier. We do in terms of the quality of it, but the thing that I think is particularly interesting here and that I want to point out is right here. You see that?
Uh-huh.
And we put these in right before we started. That is the fixed star. Do you know which fixed star is at that spot in Taurus?
I can't see, so small.
Is that Aldebaran?
The 27th degree of
Taurus.
Taurus is Algol.
Algol. Yep.
Oh,
he's wrong. I knew
Algol.
that because I have a lot of planets right there.
Yeah. Algol. Right. So we have the signifier for Brigham Young and or the rest of the church making an immediate application to Algol on the midheaven. Like, to me, that is definitely the symbol of Brigham Young picking up the mantle, becoming very public, becoming a very prominent 10th house type of church. And Algol does carry signification of deception, signification of destruction, signification of evil, Mountain Meadows Massacre, does carry signification of grandiosity, of a lot. Algol is a very complex fixed star, and that close, with Venus making that close of an application, that to me speaks more about the fraud that is perpetrated with the story of Joseph Smith.
Interesting. Yeah, that's considered like one of, if not the most difficult, right, of the fixed stars.
Right.
Like the most negative.
Because what else can we think of as the whole correlation effort as an effort of institutional fraud? And I know people don't necessarily think about it, and I know the Mormon Church would hold question to that. But when you take all of your history and stick it through a, whitewashed, bleached experience and bring everything out the other side squeaky clean, that kind of is instigating fraud, right? And Joseph, Brigham Young didn't start correlation, but it was because of the methodologies of authoritarianism that Brigham Young implemented that made correlation possible.
Yeah.
And so in a way, it's actually Brigham Young and this process of smoothing over the history of the church that is the fraud of Joseph's story, not necessarily Joseph himself. I think Joseph, what I see in this chart is somebody who was subject to their own delusion, but was somehow successful in bringing the sun and the moon together in the ninth house, right? Somehow successful to bring the luminaries, the very powerful luminaries, the congregation, the followers into that ninth house. And yet Venus is not in the ninth house. Venus is in the 10th house, and Venus is applying to Algol, right?
And she is domiciled. She is pleasant and happy right there. And within the church itself, the voting essentially of Brigham, there was definitely just like, this is the next beautiful step. Like, this makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
So it fits.
My understanding as well, when I think of Algol and now we're bringing in Venus because Venus is there applying to the conjunction with this fixed star, was the idea of power and then the disadvantaged and being like benefiting from less fortunate or like from others. I don't know how to describe it, but there's like power dynamics going on.
Absolutely.
Like,
totally.
Yeah.
How about this? Algol brings difficulties. The usual indication is of losing one's head, whether literally or metaphorically. So interesting that they lost the head of the church.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was an actual change of the guard. And in that, so many difficulties came.
Yeah. And the Brigham Young Church is the one that got really big, but Sidney Rigdon went off. Emma had her own church, like the reorganized church. Like that at the moment that it happened, there was a splinter off into at least 3 other organizations that are also claimed, access to the Book of Mormon and authority to use it, and claimed to be Mormon. And there are a lot of other smaller splinter groups that are, from that same lineage, but Brigham's is the one that got the biggest, the 10th house, midheaven, right?
Yep.
And all the stuff, Mountain Meadows, all of it is so Brigham Young.
Money.
That's all the money, right? They created their own currency, their own. Brigham Young did make his own bank, Zions, and ZCMI, like all of it is very, empire building Brigham Young
corporation, man, like
right? And the Algol is, all that, bringing in all of the, the death of the original vibrance. Like I think of Joseph Smith, whether you thought it was good or bad or fraud or not fraud or deception or not deception, it was people, when they talk about it, you read people's journals, it was very vibrant and very alive, and people were super into it. And they were into it so much that they were pursued from place to place, and there was a lot of persecution and they still stuck with it because they were so into it, right? Which is very cult-like in a way, but beyond those kinds of signs of things, it was just part of the signs of the times as well, part of the times, how people were.
Well, that was a lot.
Yeah. So my judgment is, and I'll let you each speak too, but my ultimate judgment is no, Joseph is not a fraud. He was subject to his own illusions and delusions and grandiosity. And for some reason he was able to pull in his followers into that ninth house place, but he himself was not a deliberate fraud, but his story was taken after his death and used to instigate fraud or fraud-like behavior on, now from Venus. Now they're behind, right? So they're they're in the past, the moon and sun from Venus's standpoint. So they're cadent. The sun and moon are cadent to Venus, right? Falling away from. So
that's your judgment.
That's my judgment. Now you both of you have to say yours.
Mindy.
Oh, I think I would agree with you. But I do feel like how close all of those other aspects are. I mean, they are right on top of him. They are right there. So I would argue that, though I agree with you in kind of a finite form, I would also add that I don't think that he lived out his time as a leader without some of that fraud. I think that there was the possibility that the intention when he started was okay, but very quickly he learned that there was potential for Pluto riches, for the deal with the devil, for gathering a following, for creating the bank, for creating, potentially becoming the president. Like, there was a lot within his lifetime that did come quickly. Yeah. And so, I think I both agree.
I would agree with that. I think there was a lot of deception. I think he was a deceiving person in many ways. But again, what's the difference between deception and fraud, right?
Right. Yeah. And certainly we've learned that within horary questions, there's so often we have to get more clear on the words and the context.
Like when I think of fraud, I think of Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
Right. Bernie Madoff was a clear fraud.
Yeah.
Right. Deception is different. I had a childhood friend whose parent ended up going to jail or got convicted of some stuff, shenanigans, and I can't remember all the details, but it was like shady kind of business deals that people lost a lot of money in. And I think of like that person, and even though they got caught up in stuff, and even though they ended up having to do deliberate falsifications of things, and they were obviously not truthful in everything, I don't think of that person as a fraud in the sense of I know something is wrong and I'm going to say the opposite of it to get people to give me their money, even though I know it's wrong. That sense of believing something yourself makes the lies, it doesn't make them more acceptable, but it makes it so they're not, for me, they don't seem like they're just normal lies as opposed to I don't know.
Like less deliberately harmful because it's believed by themselves.
It's believed by themselves. Yeah. So I think Joseph believed he was speaking with God and angels.
Right.
I think he believed he transmitted the Book of Mormon. I think he believed these things about himself. Right?
Yeah. I'm with you on that one.
But so let me just clarify. That what I'm saying is I believe that about him. I'm saying I believe that about him from this chart.
Right.
I'm not saying that there was a definite period of my time where that was not my personal take on Joseph Smith was much more of him being a fraud. I'm saying that my read on the chart is that that position, regardless of what my personal feelings about him, my feelings about him were from 20 years ago. Anyways, but Bianca, what was we were going to say?
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking, because I hadn't really looked at the chart before you pulled it up, so I was able to kind of come to my own conclusions as we're talking about the symbols. So I didn't come in with a clear set of like, it's a yes or it's a no. It's like, let me be open to the discussion and see where it goes. And there was a bit of a Neptunian flavor as we were talking, because we're kind of like meandering through, but I was just like, I don't know how I feel. Like, but when I think about the actual word fraud, I'm like, I do believe that Joseph Smith, I believe that Joseph Smith believed in himself, and it was coming from a place of conviction. And when I think of fraud, that's that whole like some kind of deceptive conduct to gain advantage or money or whatever. So I don't think that was his intention. So to say, like, to answer the question, was Joseph Smith a fraud or is Joseph Smith a fraud, then I would say no to this chart. So I think that's the testimony that I'm going with, that I don't think he is. But, that's just my long-winded answer to to something that we've already just spoken about. So I guess I'm reiterating basically
that's what we're asking for, right? Each person's kind of closing thoughts. I want to quickly just add, you used a few words that really caught my attention. Convicted, even confident. I don't know if you said that, but it popped in my head. Conducting, like, there's all these con words, and it makes me think of con artist, right? Like, what makes a con artist? Someone who is convicted to what they believe in. They come across very confident, right? And it is so believable because they believe it. There's something so deeply true within them that it's easy to be attracted to that. The sense that they know, and I don't know, so I'm going to lean on their knowing. I'm going to lean on their confidence and their conviction. So I think that's just an interesting little twist to, would we say fraud and con as the same thing?
Right.
Potentially, semantics. So
and the chart does show Mercury right there. So it's like Joseph. So if we say, was Joseph Smith a fraud? Then we could say, on the one hand, we could say yes, because he was the subject of his own fraud. Right. And we could also say, no, he wasn't a fraud because what he perpetrated on others was coming from his own conviction. But that conviction was a result of the fraud that he perpetrated upon himself. Right.
It's getting real flowery in here.
Well, then to add to that as well, we ask a question, but then we also think about the question that's being asked and and be like, does this fit what we're trying to get out of this? And I always like to say the question is Joseph Smith a fraud? I would think that what concerns me more is not so much is he a fraud, but more is he deceptive? Like, because I would, if I'm an active member participating in the church, then I want to know that there's no deception here, and that Joseph Smith had true intentions and a pure heart and all these things. So, and I think that deception is probably something that I would concern myself more with than the actual fraudulent behavior, because I feel like fraud does involve deception, but not all deception involves fraud.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I'm like, I'd rather think of it as was Joseph Smith deceptive, but then that So,
but I will
again the question. What was
so I will say though that to your question, was he deceptive? I will say 100% yes. That's not a horary. That's just coming from my own space. But this is what I would say about that though, is that Mormons, and I think Joseph and every other Mormon in that era, in that period of time, was fundamentally deceptive and trained themselves and reinforced deception as part of the Mormon culture. And I'm saying that
Unbeknownst to themselves.
known to themselves. And I'm saying
No,
that
unbeknownst to themselves. You're saying
I'm
known
saying-
to themselves.
yeah, absolutely. I think they were I think they learned to be deceptive, and I think they were intentionally deceptive, and it was part of their survival need. And I say that because, like, when I read the story of my great blah 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 grandmother, who we have her handwritten journal, like, one of the statements that stands out to me in that is, like, the militia came to her door searching for people, right? And so they came and knocked on her door, and one of the questions she was asked was, are they a big group or blah? And they're like, and are they bearing arms? Right? And she said, absolutely, they are. Multiple. Every single one of them is bearing multiple arms, right? And this is how. And I grew up as a kid, and I'm sure I'm going to, Mindy, I think you're going to have grown up this way too. I just have to think it happened. You learn how to say things that are true that are misleading.
Absolutely.
Right? This is totally deep into Mormon culture. And the reason she said that is because she knew that the people that she was telling would think that she meant firearms. And she was talking about the arms that they were born with. And she wrote that in her journal, right? And this is an example of how Mormons and the culture of Mormonism was deceptive, and deception was built into the culture.
Yeah, we call it mental gymnastics.
Right?
That's like, we just mess with it in our heads to make it fit the question.
We mess with it in our heads to make it fit. And it's such a deep part of the culture. So I would say, yes, Joseph Smith was absolutely 100% deceptive. And deception was not frowned on then in the same way that it is frowned on today in the Mormon church.
Yeah.
It was not, they were not Puritan people. These were people that were out there wild, having, like, this was a sexual revolution was going on. This was like the hippie days. This, like, we think of the 60s in the US, this was what was going on at that time. There were like in the 60s, there was like lots of cults and open free sex and free. This was kind of like this. That was like the mirror in the 1800s was what was going on in a very 1800 kind of way.
And then you overlay survival on that, right? Like the survival
Yeah.
mechanism on that.
The very survival mechanism was, it was like, if you could be deceptive and honest at the same time, you had a very high, that was a super skill, superpower in Mormonism, was to be able to be 100% honest and deceptive. Was like a superpower. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, this has been such an interesting conversation. I really appreciate the depths that we've gone through here, and we've done a bit of meandering, and I really enjoyed this. Is there any other last thoughts that you guys want to share before we wrap it up here today?
Yeah, I think we've covered as many bases as possible.
We did. We've talked a lot about stuff.
We have not left any stone unturned in this conversation.
Not even the one in our hats.
So anyone got anything going on that they want to share, like projects, or I think you're going to Norwalk, Ryan? Yeah,
I'm going to be in Norwalk. I'll be there in person. So if anybody listening is going to be there, reach out, connect. Let's, have a chat. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And I don't have anything that's going on at the moment. Just can find me, book a reading on my website. Mindy, you?
Same. Yep. Just find me on the website. And I wish I could be at Norwalk this year. My little one is going to graduate from high school. So that's important. I will be there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. And if you've got any comments or any questions, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on Faith Meets Fate.